Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating contradiction in modern history. Between 1988 and 2002, Jamaica was battling some seriously intense domestic challenges. We're talking deep economic restructuring and totally devastating natural disasters. And yet, on the exact same timeline, they were achieving absolute, undeniable global cultural triumphs. It's an incredible story.
Which brings us to the core mystery we're unpacking today. How exactly did Jamaica navigate these severe crises at home, only to essentially conquer global pop culture in the 1990s? This era really is a masterclass in how resilience operates on a national scale. Because it wasn't just about surviving, it was about innovating and genuinely thriving on the world stage while the foundations back home were literally being rebuilt from the ground up.
So let's jump into Section 1, 1988, Storms and Sleds. Talk about a year of extremes. Picture this. It's September 1988, and the absolute devastation of Hurricane Gilbert strikes the island. This was a monster storm that battered Jamaica for 12 straight hours with 140-mile-per-hour winds. It destroyed over 100,000 homes and caused an estimated $7 billion in damage. But then, look at earlier that very same year. The Jamaican bobsled team makes their historic, total underdog debut at the Calgary Winter Olympics. And even when their sled crashed, Dudley Stokes, Michael White, Devin Harris, and Chris Stokes bravely pushed it to the finish line, completely winning the hearts of the entire globe.
Talk about emotional whiplash, right? In February, the country is riding this wave of immense national pride under the global spotlight. By September, they're reeling from unprecedented destruction. A lot of Jamaicans had never even seen a hurricane before Gilbert. But in true Jamaican fashion, by the end of '88, the country really leaned on its resilient spirit, and crucially, its music to cope. Love Dearn released the hit song Wild Gilbert, and it used humor as a really powerful form of national comfort during a deeply trying time.
Moving right along to Section 2, the digital dancehall boom. So while all this was happening, a new sound was taking over. Dancehall, or raga when you're talking about the modern digital style. It cranked up the tempo, used a lot more Jamaican patois, and intensely focused on track instrumentals, known as rhythms. This technological leap from acoustic roots to raw digital rhythm was sparked massively by King Jammy's 1985 hit, Under Me Slang Tang by Wayne Smith. By using a keyboard for the hook, a total revolution was born. In fact, that single slang tang rhythm was so influential, it was used in over 200 subsequent recordings.
I absolutely love how the dub poet Mutabaruka captured this stylistic earthquake. He said, if 1970s reggae was red, green, and gold, then in the next decade it was gold chains. That pretty much hits the nail on the head. The music pivoted away from the gentle, spiritual roots of the 70s and leaned hard into materialism, high fashion, and explicit lyrics, often referred to as slackness. Artists like Yellowman really championed this wild new era. He was massively successful, even becoming the first Jamaican DJ to sign with a major American record label. And this genre just exploded globally. You had artists like Shabba Ranks gaining massive international crossover appeal. Domestically, this cultural boom birthed Reggae Sumfest in 1993, which quickly and rightfully earned its title as the greatest reggae show on earth. But, music is always cyclical. As the 90s progressed, especially following periods of urban violence, a new generation of artists, most prominently Buju Banton and Capleton, started steering their lyrics back toward a much more conscious, roots-driven Rastafari direction.
All right, Section 3, the 90s financial crisis. 240%. Let that sink in for a second. That was Jamaica's debt-to-GDP ratio by the late 1980s. It is a staggering, extraordinarily high figure, and it demanded urgent, dramatic fiscal action. The government really had no choice but to impose deep spending cuts to force a surplus. This was the intense, painful economic reality that everyday Jamaicans were living through, right alongside their massive cultural renaissance. And trying to fix that economy in the mid-90s, it triggered a really painful domino effect. First, to fight a credit-fueled burst of inflation, the Bank of Jamaica tightened monetary policy in 1995. Second, that directly drove up interest rates. Third, those sky-high rates caused severe weakness in the real estate market. And finally, that real estate collapse triggered a massive systemic banking crisis. It was just a brutal chain reaction that ultimately forced a complete restructuring of the nation's financial sector. Yet, interestingly enough, this severe economic pressure actually fostered a unique era of political moderation. Following the really polarized and turbulent decades of the 70s and 80s, the major political parties realized they just had to work together. When the People's National Party, or PNP, retook office in 1989, they actually embraced and maintained the basic economic reforms previously put in place by the opposing Jamaica Labour Party. Out of sheer national necessity, they adopted a much more collaborative, centrist approach.
Which leads us perfectly to Section 4, the P.J. Patterson era.
This era of complex transition was heavily defined by P.J. Patterson. He hit some massive political milestones. In 1997, he led the PNP to a victory that broke the third-term barrier, winning 50 out of 60 available seats. By 2002, he made history again as the first Jamaican prime minister to be sworn in for a fourth consecutive term. Under his watch, there were massive investments to modernize Jamaica's infrastructure, which really spurred growth in tourism and tech. But arguably his most critical achievement for the country's sovereignty, he ended Jamaica's grueling 18-year borrowing relationship with the IMF, finally giving the country some much-needed latitude over its own economic destiny.
And finally, Section 5, taking the world stage.
Think back to the very end of the 90s. We've talked about the legendary bobsledding debut and the track and field dominance the country is so famous for. But what major sporting event put Jamaica back in the international spotlight in 1998 in a completely different arena? Any guesses?
The Reggae Boys.
In 1998, Jamaica made history by becoming the first English-speaking Caribbean country to ever qualify for the FIFA World Cup. It was just this massive unifying high note for the country. And they didn't just show up to participate. They scored 3 goals on the world's absolute biggest stage. Once again, that Jamaican spirit of punching far above its weight class was broadcast to billions of viewers worldwide. So it really all comes back to this incredible dichotomy we started with. On the domestic front, Jamaicans spent these years dealing with 140-mile-per-hour hurricanes, terrifying debt ratios, and painful financial restructuring. Yet, running perfectly parallel to that hardship, they managed to build an era of unprecedented global dominance, launching a dancehall explosion that forever changed global pop music, turning a bobsled debut into a legendary story, and storming the World Cup. It's undeniable proof that pressure truly does create diamonds. While the 90s brought intense crises, they forged undisputed champions in music, sports, and civic restructuring. As you look at the massive global footprint of Jamaican culture today, from international charts to the Olympic podium, I'll leave you with this to ponder. How does the resilient, innovative spirit forged in the fires of 1988 to 2002 continue to fuel Jamaica's outsized global influence today? Keep exploring, and thanks for checking out this explainer.